Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. So happy to be here starting off January of 2024, year five of this show, which is still mind-boggling to me. Every single time that we just talk about, where the show has gone, the amount of years that we've done it, it's great to be back here for year five, of course, with some of my good friends and people, Clay Trainham, Valer Shabilla.
It's I wrote year five. Is it year six?
I was sitting here going like, I don't think that's correct.
I think it's year six.
I'm pretty sure it's year six.
Yeah, because we did 19, 20,
Yeah.
21, 22, 23, 24. It's six. Oh my God. My bad,
I
Steven. I
was
wrote
sitting
down
here
five.
going like, it's year six, guys. It's year six.
Okay,
I had to count on my fingers like a child, but we got it figured out.
Where we messed up there, Valer, is we
Mhm.
should have let Steven go and not admit to you writing that in the rundown.
I will say that's where the growth is. That's where the 6 year growth has happened in this podcast. Is 3 years ago you absolutely would have done that. One
Yeah.
thousand percent you would have just let me fall.
I
On my
was totally prepared to leave him out to dry, and then Valer just owned up to it
We're
immediately.
just better people
So,
these days, you know. My people invented math. I just want to remind everybody, and here I am, not knowing how to count to six. So
anyway, welcome back to
yeah,
Pharmaceutical Soccer for year six of
there you go.
following Nashville SC.
Act like nothing happened.
And speaking of year six, what we've done all the time. Valer, how's your weekend?
You know, it's which one? I feel like there's so much to update folks on. I did so much. I went to a pajama party for New Year's. That was fun. Uh, I wore some nice pajamas with cheetahs on them. It's pretty nice. I looked
Wow.
great, I think. Uh, um, I also watched Clay's cat for one day, one night for like solid
20 minutes.
15 minutes. Clay, I have to be honest with you here, and I have to come straight here. Now, for our audience listening, I'm not a animal person. I don't know anything about animals, and I generally stay away from them as much as I can. Clay, I don't know your cat's name.
Oh, well, first off, it's Mary's cat. Um,
Y'all's cat's name.
yeah, her name is Seneca.
Seneca. All right. Well, Seneca was a good person, good cat, a good cat. Uh, I walk in. I'm with my girlfriend, and we walk in, and Seneca greets us and meows at me repeatedly, then shows me her room.
Meow back.
And which honestly was pretty helpful because I've forgotten exactly where I guess the cat stuff was. And then once I did everything that was necessary, which took all of about 5-10 minutes, Seneca was nowhere to be found. I couldn't even say goodbye to her. For all I knew, she left the house. I did close the door behind me, which I thought would be a good thing to do if I'm house sitting or cat sitting for someone. And then Clay proceeded to give me a case of beverages that was expired. He didn't know it was expired, I don't think. But I also got some chocolates. And shout out to Clay and Mary for their hospitality. And shout out to my cat skills.
Cat skills are a mountain range. I will say that beer probably still works. It's probably still fine.
I'm gonna drink it. Who are we kidding here? It's a case of beer. What am I gonna do? Throw it away?
Yeah. I did a lot of traveling. I mean, not a lot, but I went down to McMinnville for Christmas, and then did a delayed Christmas in Evansville. Spent like actually 4 days in Evansville, which is the longest I've spent there since I lived there, which was kind of fun. And then got sick, and my wife got sick, so we just had a great break. So that's all that happened there, and it's my birthday this week, so shout out to me. Also, shout out to Valer.
I'm saying it's both y'all's birthdays coming up.
And then shout out to Indiana University football for having two former quarterbacks playing for a national championship on Monday night.
That's right, baby. Nothing matters. My weekend does not matter. Look, my weekend, my holiday, nothing matters. Okay, I don't have a life. I watched all the Lord of the Rings extended versions on Christmas, like my tradition is, and it was a great time, and I loved it.
I will say we're currently in the midst of rewatching all the Harry Potter movies because we're getting ready to go to England here in a couple months. And it's very funny when you get to like the first two ones feel like children's movies, and then it gets dark
Yeah,
immediately.
absolutely. There's no build up. It just gets dark. Absolutely. But look, the best part about my time is like, yeah, I've had trouble sports this year. Okay. It's been a weird time for me sports wise as a sports fan, besides with my University of Michigan football team currently in the national championship, beating Alabama in the semifinal. Oh man, I can't wait. Who knows? Tomorrow, I'm either going to be really sad or extremely happy in releasing this episode. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Um, but look, we were gone for a little bit over the holidays. But now that January is upon us, the season is almost here. Which means we're going to be back to a regular schedule more often than not for the rest of the off season, and then going into the season itself. We're back for year 6, and there was a lot that happened when we were gone too. Schedule released, player signings, free agency opened up. Uh, what else? Anything else happened over that time that I'm missing? January U.S. camp got announced. I mean,
Yeah, there you go.
some good stuff happening, but I think let's kind of start. We'll go into player signings, stuff like that, in the next segment. I think let's talk about the schedule release to start out, because I think that's kind of, I think it's a little bit more, it's a more fun way to start out, of course, when it comes to talking about the National SC season ahead. Obviously, we've talked about the Champions League match itself. Um, when it comes to the Champions Cup match itself, obviously against Mocha. But then that Sunday, after we travel to Mocha, Saturday, is it Saturday or Sunday that we start our home opener?
Sunday.
Sunday.
So Sunday, 2/25 starts the regular season for MLS, which is pretty early. MLS season used to not start till March for the most part, April, even
You
sometimes.
say that, but the first ever Nashville MLS game was on February 29th.
Now there's that as well. So and then if you look at last year with the World Cup, things were different. So pretty much what we learned from this is that MLS is inconsistent with their scheduling. Go figure. So here we go. We'll talk about the schedule currently. And what Nashville SC has, I think, is a very balanced schedule in terms of the regular season. Now, obviously, we still don't know the Leagues Cup schedule. We still don't know if Nashville were to advance in the Champions Cup, how that schedule would reflect here. Those dates are established for the Champions Cup, actually. So a lot of this will probably not have to move for the Champions Cup. I say probably because we just don't know what happens throughout the season. Sometimes things happen and games get moved. In terms of the Leagues Cup, it's going to be a month-long break again. So that's going to come up in the summer. It looks like it's going to be between sometime between July and August. Nashville's last game in July is July 20th against Philadelphia Union. They don't play in MLS again until August 24th. So that's about a little bit over a month after that. So that month is most likely not most likely, it is going to be the Leagues Cup. However, the dates within that month for the Leagues Cup, we won't know until later date. Another thing to note before kind of going into away trips and whatnot, there are two nationally televised games. Other than that, all the games will be on Apple TV. So the Atlanta United, which Nashville finally gets an actual rival match during rivalry week, who is Atlanta United. That match is on Fox, Big Fox. And then there's an FS1 match against Orlando as well in July. So those are the two matches that will be nationally televised alongside Apple TV, because all matches are on Apple TV.
I will say this, that if Nashville SC makes a run through Champions Cup, which would be great, and is what we all want, it is going to be tough in league play, because in the first 2 months of the season, Nashville is playing away to LAFC, home to Columbus, home to Philadelphia, and away to Inter Miami around the same time that each of those rounds through the Champions Cup is going on. So there could be some not very fun matchups, but those not very fun matchups may be the result of also making a run in the Champions Cup, which is fun, which is like the sort of give and take of making these international tournaments. So here's to those selection headaches as Nashville hopefully advances round by round.
Well, and with that, I mean, there are some headaches, of course, but I think the best part about kind of schedule releasing as well is the fun of, the trips that you haven't been able to take, that you have been able to take, the ones that you were looking forward to. When it comes to being able to get on the road or any sort of like bigger matchups that you're like, hey, this matchup hasn't happened in a bit, or, just depending on where at in the season. So is there anything that sticks out to you? We'll start with you, Valera, about like trips that you're looking forward to possibly taking or just matchups that are looking, pretty impressive to you.
Yeah, I think with the trips, I always like to look at cities that will provide some fun, I guess, or have some entertainment value. At this point, I think between the three of us, we've probably been to every Eastern Conference city out there or close to it, I think. So there's not much kind of to surprise anyone. But when you look at from a fan perspective, I think you can spend a weekend in a lot of these cities and have a great time. To me, the Atlanta match in September, September 14th in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Saturday match in Atlanta. You can go spend a couple days. It's only about 3.5 hour drive. It's really hard to beat in terms of away trips go. And if anybody's been to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, it's a beautiful stadium, and Atlanta has a lot to do, a lot to offer. For me personally, I'm looking at the Mocha trip first and foremost because I'm most likely doing that. So that's going to be really exciting. The first international match outside of the US and Canada, of course, for Nashville SC. So I'm excited for that. And then in terms of the regular season, yeah, there's a lot. New York, Chicago, these are all great cities, and Nashville has a chance to visit two of those at times, in terms of New York. And then there are some Western teams as well that for the Western Conference, what I always recommend folks is that if you like it and you can make it, definitely go for the Western Conference because you don't know when is the next time you're going to get a trip to that city. So I always recommend kind of taking advantage of those Western Conference as soon as you can.
Yeah, an example of that would be like Nashville's not going to St. Louis or Austin this year. Two of the trips I think most people are looking forward to if it happens. I think we've all collectively agreed that none of us are going to go to DC. I think that one is on the table. We don't want any Nashville fans to go to DC. I've already been a couple times anyway. There's no reason to go to a game in DC at all whatsoever.
There'll be one Nashville fan in DC, and that's it.
But outside of the DC trip, I would recommend obviously Cincinnati and Atlanta are must away trips if you've never done it. I don't know how many away trips I'm doing this year. Like I said, we're going out of the country in April, but we already have our tickets booked and everything for going to Portland for July 4th weekend. And I'm very much looking forward to doing that. I didn't do that trip and then COVID happened. And so I should have done that trip whenever y'all went to Portland all the way back in 2020.
Yeah, we had a great time in Portland, Stephen. Actually went with Stephen throughout the whole trip, and we met up with a friend there. So it was a good time all around. I will say it's a bummer that Cincinnati away is on a Wednesday again. I think a lot of fans were looking forward to making that trip. And it just shows that there's still
the league is still trying to
desired.
crush it, man. It's terrible. Like, come on, give us a Saturday. Like, it's always going to be there in some way, shape, or form.
I appreciate you said that the league was trying to crush it.
Absolutely.
Because as we all know, Cincinnati crushed this league.
Oh, damn. I forgot about that.
It
wasn't
this
this
2018 throwback for you guys?
It was the league
They're talking about year 6 stuff.
But
yeah.
I mean, otherwise, I think it's a fairly balanced one. When I looked at 2021 schedule, it was just kind of like all over the place because of Geodis Park being built. Here, it's like there's a heavy home stretch at the start of the season, but then after that, it's like 2 home, 2 away, 3 away, 1 home, 2 away, 1 home. It's balanced, which is what you want to see.
It is a bummer the lack of afternoon games. I think afternoon games are so much fun, and I don't think that every weekend needs to be an afternoon game. But I was really hoping that we would see at least a handful of them because it just that just creates a fun day when you're walking out of the park and it's like 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock and you still have like your evening to well for Vallejo probably celebrate at a certain place. Uh, but yeah, I do miss the idea of having afternoon games because those are always very fun.
I do as well. Don't listen to Clay. You should come to DC because that'll be fun. I'll definitely be going to DC because yay, I'm excited for that one. But I don't know. I got to figure out how many matches I'm going to come back home for as well. It's all matches are away matches for me besides one.
All right, well, have fun with
But
that. Also enjoy Loudon games.
I do need to go to a couple Loudon games just for for the show. In honor of the show, I feel like I have to. Look, not only did we have a schedule release, but we had a pretty major signing to talk about when it comes to Nashville SC, as well as, we got to talk about the roster ahead and what we still need and stuff going on. So we're going to do that right next here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you could also check us out on Patreon if you haven't. Year 6 now starting for Pharmaceutical Soccer. Please help us keep the lights on. Your Patreon subscription just helps us keep the show going. We love doing it every single year. We love bringing you these updates and this content every single week. Obviously, Vallejo has done even a lot more with the content that we've been providing, and it's awesome. We love to do it. We love gracing everybody with the gospel of Nashville SC. So please help us support the show. Subscribe to our Patreon at Pharma Soccer. That'd be terrific. Thank you very much for that. So, what's up, guys? How are you?
Why do you sound like one of those like automated like teddy bear or something? It's like every time you press it, it says a word, but then it stops. You have to press it again.
Oh,
So the
sorry,
first
guys. That
word.
was my AI going. My AI
Oh,
voice going.
okay,
Oh, yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. That's
Do you
my
have like a way to present this information before I start talking?
no. You can start talking.
Okay. Well, Nashville SC completed the trade for Tyler Boyd, who is a former U.S. men's national team player. That will happen again, but played about 10 games or 11 games for the USMNT from the LA Galaxy. Last season was his first season in MLS. Before that, he played in the Turkish league and the New Zealand or A League, somewhere there to start his career, but then also spent most of his time in Turkey before going to the LA Galaxy. He's a winger. If you haven't heard of him, I think most people listening would have heard of him, if not from MLS, from the USMNT and his involvement in the Turkish league as well. It's a really weird structured deal. Nashville SC gave 150K in GAM up front and an international spot in 2024 and 2025 as well. So technically 2 international spots, but 1 each year. And 150 in GAM just goes on for 2024 GAM. However, here's the kicker, which, you're probably listening to this saying this is too low, because LA Galaxy may receive up to 625,000 in conditional GAM per season if Boyd meets the performance metrics. Now, we don't know what those performance metrics could be. They could be 10 appearances. They could be 100 appearances. Could be 5 goals. They could be 50 goals. We don't really know. And chances are there are more than one incentives, if you would. I don't think they're all tied up to like appearances or goals. There's probably a lot more complicated stuff in there. Regardless of the deal, I think this is a very positive step for Nashville SC, especially with Fafa Pico not re-signing. This is a younger winger than Fafa Pico. As far as goal contribution, if not the same, Tyler Boyd might be a little bit higher. Obviously, different teams play a part in that. But this is an everyday starter. This is an everyday MLS starter. He did it with the Galaxy. Started 32 games, played 39 total in all competitions, and contributed 13 goals, 8 goals with 5 assists. So Nashville's getting a real starter to replace Fafa Pico, who was a starter for Nashville, but obviously had international duty, some injuries, and some suspensions throughout the season.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting signing. I think the good thing for me is it kind of came out of nowhere. And it's the type of positive mood out of nowhere that we haven't really come to expect in the last few years. So it's somebody that would have been wanted by other teams, certainly. The big thing for me comparing him to Fafa is I think Fafa is more of a natural finisher than Boyd is, but Boyd is certainly much better at providing service from that winger role. He's among the best in the league about doing exactly that. And of course, with Schaffelberg, Mukhtar, of course, like there's a lot going on in Nashville's offense. It's good to like that. You think that Boyd would fit in better than Fafa in being a little bit younger. I'm really excited about that as a signing. I actually think he kind of fits, and I think there's a chance he could have a bit of a sort of breakout season with Nashville because he's also. I mean, how often do we talk about intangible stuff on here? We talked about it with the locker room, with Dax and things over the years, getting guys who used to be captains at other clubs to help build the locker room. Well, on the other end of that is getting guys who feel like they've got a chip on their shoulder. They're trying to prove somebody wrong. That's been a huge characteristic of this team and of Gary Smith teams in general for years. And it doesn't seem like Tyler Boyd really wanted to leave LA, but he left LA because he felt like he had to. LA didn't value him in the way that he wanted, and they sought to deal him. And Blair might have more on that.
Yeah, just a couple more things. In terms of his salary, it's pretty much 350K at the moment. Now, if Nashville were to re-sign him after his contract is over, he might ask for a raise. And if he's asking for a raise, chances are things went really well. Kind of like the incentives we were talking about. If that 625,000 was sent to the LA Galaxy, that means Tyler Boyd is firing on all cylinders for Nashville SC. So it's only good things there. But on the pitch, I do want to say also another thing that might give him the edge over Fafa, especially for Nashville SC, is that he's better against the ball as well in terms of his metrics and those numbers against the ball. We know Nashville SC doesn't keep the ball a whole lot. So when you're looking for, not only is he able to create maybe a little bit more, but he's also better in maybe getting the ball back and getting it in the feet of Hani Mukhtar. And that also opens up the possibility of maybe playing with Schaffelberg and Mukhtar and a striker, which would be Sam Surridge. That is something that we rarely ever saw Nashville SC do with Fafa Pico and Jacob Schaffelberg. Maybe with Tyler Boyd, Gary Smith will feel a little more inclined to do something like that. I still don't think it will be the go-to method, but I think that is more of a possibility with Boyd rather than Fafa.
And this is a question that I don't necessarily have the answer to, but he is cheaper generally than Fafa Pico was, but is acquisition costs factored into salary cap hit? Because if it is, he's probably cost the same, at least on terms of like as far as salary cap is concerned, like on paper cost.
I don't think the acquisition cost in GAM hits the salary cap. Now, obviously, because you're shipping away GAM, you're losing some of the ability to pay down someone's contract, right? So I think that's the cost really there more than it's not, because if it's an actual money signing from international, then that would hit the salary, the cap. I believe that's the rule. Now I will need to double check, but I'm pretty sure that's the rule there.
I mean, that's the only real question because on paper, obviously, you're paying significantly less. But if there is loss of GAM, is still hitting the salary cap, and that it's a loss of GAM. So that either way, it's not completely the right way to say that it's 350. Therefore, it's less than this because you're losing out on what you could.
Obviously, and the other thing is that like every signing, you judge it at the end of that sort of period, and you'll come to the conclusion that either was worth it or not. If Tyler Boyd is really playing really well for Nashville SC, it doesn't matter what the loss is, right? It's kind of like the Sam Surridge or Hani Mukhtar thing. No one's sitting here talking about Hani Mukhtar's transfer fee, right?
It's the Godoy. It's the Godoy thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Godoy, when he was signed, everybody said Nashville overpaid for him, but what Nashville got from him was worth the 600K in GAM or whatever it was. So that's kind of what it's going to come down to.
Well, and that's exactly it too. Like the player that you're getting in goal contributions and whatnot. I mean, even with like the GAM allowances and all that, I think Tyler Boyd will still be less than we paid for Annabelle Godoy up front. And if if he hits all those metrics, whatever they are. But pretty much we're trading away an international slot, which if we were to go out and get another player, we probably would have needed one that was a winger anyway. So literally, it's kind of just a like for like to send the international spot away. And look, if he doesn't perform, you didn't really pay that much. You go out and get another player in the summer, maybe some sort of Jacob Schaffelberg loan type of style deal for another player that's an offensive player. But we're talking about Tyler Boyd's numbers too when it comes to him playing for an absolutely garbage LA Galaxy team. Just a not good LA Galaxy team, and Tyler Boyd was able to put up those numbers that he was doing. Imagine what he can do with players like Hani and Sam Surridge around him. I really do feel like the age that Tyler's in, I really feel like this is a masterclass from Mike Jacobs when it comes to signing Tyler Boyd. And I think our offense is also set. I don't know what you guys think for the start of our season, but looking at our offensive players and promise, I think it's kind of there.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about this a little later on this segment, but yeah, I mean, if Nashville starts this season with the offensive players they have currently, I will not be worried about the offense necessarily. Now, there are certain improvements you can do, maybe at the striker position. I think maybe Nashville can use another striker signing. Obviously, it's not going to be anything starting quality like Sam Surridge, but I think you can even make an argument for another winger or a 10 type of player just as reinforcement. But yeah, in terms of if we're looking at different areas of the pitch, this area seems to be pretty complete as is at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about this just at greater length with the Nashville's needs generally, but I think this is a decent team that can win games, and they're better now than they were a month ago. And I think they're much better than they were at the end of the season, provided things happen the way that they're expected to. So I feel really comfortable, especially on that side of the field with Nashville going into the season. I don't know that I would have believed myself at the end of last season that I would be comfortable going into this one. So I think that speaks to the power of the signings they've made.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to think about the ones that we have made, obviously we've made the Drew Yearwood signing. We have made the Tyler Boyd signing. I'm forgetting his name, but the player from Charlotte FC, the winger for winger depth. We definitely made a little bit more of an aggressive, start when it comes to this transfer window.
And we may still be able to sign Wubens Pacius, and with a name like that, how could you ever expect to lose again? So shout out to future Huntsville star Wubens Pacius.
So when it comes,
I just wanted to say Wubens Pacius. I apologize.
It's a great name. It's a fantastic name. But so with where we're at now, obviously getting closer to the season starting, where the team is going to be getting to the point where it's more solidified now. It's going to be more solidified now in the next month than it probably will be in February. Any of the player signings that we're probably going to make are going to be in January. It kind of assuming just the way that we build squads in general, especially with off season starting in January. Where do you think our needs currently lie? What is keeping Nashville away from that title?
If you're talking about title contender, I think there's a lot of things that have to go. But in terms of needed areas, you can't have a discussion without being worried about that midfield. Sean Davis and Anibal Godoy are two players who've done it before, but together they've never done it for Nashville SC. Anibal Godoy continues to be very important for the Nashville SC side. Now he's getting older. Sean Davis really never settled in for Nashville. Came in with big money, really, almost $1 million for his salary, and just hasn't been able to really perform to that level. Drew Yearwood, while he is an exciting younger player, young DP, he was a young DP. He's currently under 22 initiative signing. It's still his last couple of seasons with the Red Bulls weren't necessarily some sort of revelation. So you don't really know what you're getting with him specifically. Now, Nashville would want him to be at his best. And if he is at his best, then I think you have an everyday starter in MLS, which is really good. They want him to be a younger Dax McCarty, right? But those are hard to come by. That's why Dax McCarty is so valued. So, the midfield to me is still the questionable area. And I don't want to forget about Brian Anunga, but Brian Anunga will probably have the same role he had in 2024 and 2023, which is come in when needed, and that's about it. I don't know. That midfield still has me worried.
I mean, the big question for me, and we've been talking about it since 2020, is where does Randall Leal fit? And if they can find a way to make him fit either in that midfield or however they're going to work it around with the Schaffelberg, Tyler Boyd, where they're going to find him kind of answers questions elsewhere. If they can find out where Randall Leal fits, then we can figure out who's going to kind of go where on the the proverbial chessboard. I am interested in Drew Yearwood. I read Matt Doyle had a piece today about the needs for every team and who they've signed and things like that. And he spent a little bit of time talking about Drew Yearwood, who was asked to do a job in New York that doesn't necessarily suit his strengths. And he will be doing a job that's more in line with what he's good at as a player in Nashville, which is progressive passing and things like that. So I'm interested to see where he fits in. Is he somebody who's actually going to be a locked-in starter? If he is, what does that mean for Sean Davis and Annabelle Godoy? I don't know. I don't know the answer to these questions. I think we'll start to figure this out, as Champions Cup gets started. But the question for me, the biggest singular question about midfield, I think this whole offseason has been, what do you do with Randall Leal?
Yeah.
And I think they've not really had to figure that out because there's been a opening to put him on the field basically the last few years when he's been healthy. That's the other question. But now there are pieces that can play where he's been a locked-in starter when healthy. And that's where the confusion is for me, because you're paying Randall Leal $1 million a year. And if you're paying a guy $1 million a year in MLS, he needs to be starting somewhere.
And I am interested to see what that battle looks like between the three midfielders, Drew Yearwood, Sean Davis, and Annabelle Godoy. Because if we know anything about the two that Nashville had last season, is that they're going to fight for a starting spot. They're not going to just sit down and accept a backup role. No competitive player is ever going to be like, all right, I'm just a backup and it is what it is, and I'm just going to go on with my day. That's not how it works, especially for a competitive guy like Annabelle Godoy, who's still on international duty, which, by the way, is probably why they went and got somebody like Drew Yearwood, who is similar in a way to Annabelle Godoy, because Annabelle Godoy missed a lot of matches for international duty, let alone his injuries, let alone any suspension here or there. So that when you have a guy like that, and which is another reason why I think another midfielder would make things a lot better. Now, in an ideal world, what I would do is if I was Nashville SC, I would go and get Kellen Acosta because I like that player personally. But I don't know. That's not realistic, really. I don't think that's realistic for Nashville to pay that salary. He's a free agent. He might want DP money or close to it, probably. And with Randall Leal on the roster, unfortunately, you can't do that. I do think a number 8 or a hybrid 6-8 who would at least get in the rotation of the midfielders is very much necessary for me to feel comfortable with this midfield.
I will say this, and I think Valera would agree with me on this. I'm not sure about you, Steven. I actually really rate the team's overall depth as of right now.
Yeah.
I think they've got guys who can put in a job at almost every position from a backup standpoint, except for right back. And one of the guys we haven't talked about is Alex Muil. Alex Muil is somebody who can play kind of all over the field, and that's a really good utility to have around
Absolutely.
as well, especially in midfield. But while we're spending time talking about central midfield, I think it's important to emphasize this team feels a lot deeper than it felt last year.
I would agree.
I would the nature of the signings.
Yeah, and like that, it was weird. Like from the beginning of the season, and the players that we did let go, it felt like there wasn't a turn of the tide. But it does to me feel like there is one with the kind of core that we do have. You know what I mean? Like
But
the core is still there, but the new players that we brought in.
it's also the classic MLS thing. The depth doesn't feel that way if two guys are out with extended injuries, like
Yep.
because it's still MLS. But when healthy, this team feels deeper than it has in years past.
And I did say, as is, Nashville SC is starting 2024 stronger than 2023. Now, that doesn't really say much because in 2023, they finished 7th, and that's not what they aspired to be or should aspire to be. So, you know what I mean? Like, I know they made the Leagues Cup final, but let's be realistic here. They finished 7th in MLS play. So, I think they are stronger in 2024. I think in order for Nashville SC to be considered a title contender or anything like that, or to even compete, I think another signing in midfield is necessary. And then if we're really talking about what's like has to happen, is probably another signing at fullback, right back, most likely, to kind of back up Shaq Moore, especially if Shaq Moore is going to miss these sort of weeks. Even if he doesn't miss any games, he's missing some time in the US camp as well. So that's time spent away from the squad here and there. So I think that's important. I think everywhere else, honestly, they're pretty set. Goalkeeper seems like a very good spot right now. Center back, they have more than they need even. Left back, you can make an argument there, but nothing. You know, Dan Lovitz is still a quality starter for any MLS team. So I think all these other areas feel pretty comfortable, except the midfield, like I said, and right back if you're kind of looking at backup situation.
And while Nashville is making signings, other teams are also making signings, and we have a lot of those to talk about next week because that would be great. I mean, next week. No, sorry, I don't know what I'm talking about.
What
We're
are
going
you
to
saying?
talk about those next segments right here. Look, we're just getting year 6. We're not used to this yet. Okay, I got to get back in. I got to get back in the swing of things. We'll be back to talk about the other MLS signings going on in the league here right after this. And here we are, last segment of the show, Pharmaceutical Soccer at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And of course, you can follow us on Patreon if you want to help support the show. We'd appreciate it. Patreon.com.
Oh, I have a shout out. We have a
Oh,
new Patreon member,
oh,
and I want to give them a shout out because they joined our Patreon. So
Joined in the
shout out
off
to
season,
what's
clutch.
that?
Joined in the off season too,
I
clutch.
know that's a real fan. You know, they joined in November 11th, I think. So that's crazy. Like that's after the season was over, I think. So anyway, so shout out to David. I'm not gonna say any last names, privacy and whatnot. But David, you are a true hero. We appreciate you, and thank you so much for joining our Patreon. Be like David. It's $5 a month. That's all it costs, and that $5 goes such a long way for us. And it helps us keep the lights on. And not only that, it helps us do some cool things like our event where we all got together. And then some more cool things are coming this year as well. So help us by $5 a month. That's all it takes. It's like a cup of coffee. So thank you all.
so with that, season is almost here, y'all. The MLS season is getting closer and closer. Do we have a timeline for when like off-season matches start, when Nashville gets called in, like to because I'm guessing they're going to IMG again this year for preseason. When does that timeline actually start, Valaire?
So I do know that their schedule for preseason is going to be a little different than the last few years. And that's the players day to what is it called? Not attend. What's the word I'm looking for, Clay?
Report.
Report. Thank you, Stephen and Clay. The players' day to report back to their teams hasn't been announced yet, but it's most likely going to be end of next week, maybe looking around the 20th or before that of January. So the players are going to report back around that time. There's going to be about maybe 4 or 5 days with the players training before they play a game. I know that Nashville SC is going to go to Florida most likely again, but maybe they're going to be staying at home a little bit longer this time around because they do have to travel to CCL. So that's going to be kind of the difference here. We don't know the dates yet for whose teams they are playing yet. And in all honesty, I don't know, fans shouldn't expect a whole lot from these. They never say anything, honestly. These friendlies are just pointless. They're just fitness tests at most. But it's cool because we can follow it on Twitter and see who all played minutes. But other than that, the first Champions Cup game moved from early February to late February, which I think is a really big benefit for Nashville SC, because now their first game is not going to be until the 22nd in the DR, which means they have a couple more weeks to get things together. And hey, if they get a new signing here in the next few weeks, that's another week or two of them training with the squad. And I think that's a very important thing, honestly, because initially we thought that they're going to play on the 8th of February, which is only 30 days from now. So I think that extra couple of weeks, I think, gives them a little bit of a boost and maybe allows them to play one or two more friendlies that will get them prepared for that Champions Cup matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of players getting signed, around, there's been a lot of players, a lot of fun and not so fun off-season signings in the league currently. I see the first one and it still hurts my soul. I don't know how I'm necessarily going to do it when this happens. We were wondering where Dax McCarty is going to go, and it's to a rival. And to a rival that hurts. Dax McCarty did sign with Atlanta United.
Well, not officially yet, right?
He's about to sign, I guess, but no, he hasn't signed. He hasn't signed yet.
About to sign.
Will sign.
Whatever. It's been reported. Been reported by a tier 1 source. So it's going to happen sometime. It hurts my soul. I don't know about anybody. I'm happy for Dax. I'm happy he's going to get more time in the league, but also this sucks.
It's not the first time Dax has played for two different sides of a rivalry. Cassie once played for both Red Bulls and DC United. But I will say this. I was a little bit surprised by the news because I think we were all expecting for Dax to look for playing time in a multi-year deal. I don't think he could get both of those things in Atlanta. I think he could get one of those things. But it is a good signing for Atlanta. It's also a very on-brand signing for Atlanta. Atlanta has kind of done a masterclass in signing the midfield old guard of MLS over the years. Ozzy Alonso's been there. Michael Parkhurst has been there. Jeff Larinowitz has been there. Dax McCarty is definitely in that same sort of ballpark for what they're looking for. He brings them leadership. He brings them experience. He's also a ginger, which like Parkhurst and Larinowitz. So like he fits. He checks a lot of boxes in what they're looking for there. I think that's a very good signing for Atlanta. I say that saying while it may hurt to lose Dax, you need to turn the page at a certain point. And I think it makes sense for Nashville to turn the page and try and see what they can do. Nashville's midfield is significantly younger now. And if the signings work out the way and Mike Jacobs would like, things will still be good in Nashville, even though Dax is gone.
And just to kind of reiterate the point about being on Atlanta, being this is be on Atlanta's brand. Ozzy Alonso, who spent his last season in Atlanta an hour ago, just announced his retirement. So that's probably why Dax is going there. Ozzy Alonso, if you haven't heard of him, MLS legend, played for Seattle for the longest time, played in Minnesota for a bit as well, and Atlanta as well. So he's one of those. Now they're not similar players necessarily, but one midfielder out, one experienced midfielder out, another experienced midfielder in.
Just a fun Ozzy Alonso aside here. A lot of back in the day when the Gold Cup would happen or the Olympic qualifying would happen, Cuba would make the qualifying tournament or would win its qualifying tournament to get to the US. And then over the course of a couple of weeks, the Cuban team would disappear essentially. And because of the old system, they could get green cards or residency in the US fairly quickly. And Ozzy Alonso was like he's not one of the first, but he was the guy that people thought about. So that's how he came to the US for a CONCACAF tournament, kind of disappeared, then showed up and was a great player for Seattle for many years. And then later Minnesota and Atlanta. And so having worked those tournaments over the years, it's something that I experienced firsthand several times. And so every time Ozzy Alonso comes up, I just remember those stories. Oh, they're missing 8 players today. I wonder what happened.
Also spent a year playing for the Charleston Battery, so shout out USL. There you
Yes,
go.
yeah.
Well, also, I mean, now that Dax is in Atlanta, Atlanta also lost a piece to Cincinnati, and that would be Miles Robinson going to Cincinnati to play with his counterpart, his U.S. counterpart there with what's it, Matt Miazga. Hate him, don't care. And then the reason why I wanted to do this is because then I know Brandon Vasquez, who is playing for Cincinnati, is now going to Monterrey to play in Mexico. So I just wanted to have fun doing that dot connection as well. I think one of the bigger signings, probably just from a league standpoint, I don't know if it's going to be from a play standpoint because it doesn't make any sense to me, of Hugo Lloris signing to LAFC. That obviously a bigger goalkeeping name. Don't
Yeah, and then
necessarily.
Crepeau can walk and has walked.
He went to Portland, so
Yeah,
it's a domino effect, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, brings the team to the final to 2 times when he's a starting goalkeeper, and they decide he's not worth it, which is very interesting to me in that opinion. And staying with the LAFC train, Bouanga wants out before the season starts. It seems like because he does want to make that European effort again. So some stuff going on in LAFC that's
Or
very
he's
interesting.
just trying to get a little bit more money. So
That's what I
also
think is going on.
and I tweeted about this earlier today. There are some, and I highlight some similarities between the Bouanga situation and what we saw with Hani Mukhtar in the summer. Again, not the same situation, just some similarities in that Bouanga's locked in on a contract until end of 2025. That's 2 years of playing for LAFC. They could say, no, you're obligated to this contract. You have to play for us. Now, that's going to cause Bouanga to be upset, and you don't want your best star to be upset. So that's the situation there. He's probably working out a new deal with them, as well as, this interest from Saudi Arabia is coming in. And does that sound a little familiar? That a player thinks they should be valued a little higher. The club has them locked in for a contract for a few more years, and an offer from a Middle Eastern country comes in. That's the situation there. That's the sort of parallel with Hani Mukhtar. I did say I think if Hani Mukhtar was to perform in end of 2023 the same way he started 2023, I think Nashville would have given him that raise and new contract, or we would have heard a lot more of those rumors. Now Nashville didn't do that because Hani Mukhtar didn't continue to perform. For Bouanga, he had an amazing season with like 39 goals or something like that. So this is where he gets his bag, and he's trying to get that bag.
And then last but not least, of course, Mihailovic has gone to the Rapids, who are actually spending money. So I wonder if anybody told Stan Kroenke that the Rapids are spending money, because he may want to call him up and have him stop.
They're looking good, man. New manager, new players. They're looking pretty good. And they've always had a pretty solid academy too. So
didn't they just sign a goalkeeper that was pretty decent?
Yeah, they signed Sag Steffen.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So, USMNT goalkeeper.
wasn't on our list. Sorry, forgot about it. It wasn't on our list.
I did not put it on that list. To be fair, I didn't even put Miles Robinson, but shout out to whoever did that.
I will say this: the Miles Robinson one is interesting because it kind of speaks to the weird position that MLS is in when it comes to guys that are developing. Miles Robinson probably would have to take a pay cut if he wants to go to Europe from what he can make in the US. I imagine that situation has probably come to Walker Zimmerman a few times over the years. And I think it's very strange that people get mad at players for securing the future for their families instead of the off chance of making 10 more appearances with the national team. But I do find that interesting because it's a 1-year deal with Cincinnati.
And the option afterwards is on both parties, so both parties will have to agree. So
and so I'm really interested to see what happens there. I wouldn't be surprised if it is genuinely a 1-year thing and he goes overseas. I also wouldn't be surprised if they're setting it up for him to be a designated player after the first year as well. So there is some interesting things going on with that Miles Robinson move, and there's some interesting things with Cincinnati in general. I don't know that Corey Baird is going to be a fully adequate replacement for Vasquez, but we'll see what happens there.
Well,
Yeah,
with
one more. Sorry, just on Robinson, I think he's banking on playing Copa America and impressing. And then if a European team is signing a free agent, which he will be, they are willing to give him more money, right? If they don't pay a transfer fee, so it's a smart move by the player. I think I fully respect that for him kind of betting on himself more than anything, because having one good MLS season is going to be nice with Cincinnati, but also having a good campaign with the USMNT, I think will open a lot of eyes out in Europe, and he can have that move.
Yeah, and with that, like that's our show. I think for our plug, we normally do a prediction, but obviously we can't do that with matches going on. So I want you to predict just a specific free agent going to a team. Fun free agent going to a team. So I will let okay, I think Clay's ready. Clay's got his hand
I
shaking.
wish
I'll
you
let him plug and
told me
stuff like
this.
that first.
I would have thought about this. I wish you told me beforehand, but now I'm okay. Clay, you go well, I think.
Follow Clay Lassol on Twitter and Instagram. And National Soccer Archive news is out there. Obviously, the National Soccer Archive's physical collection is now at Vanderbilt Special Collections. If you have anything in National Soccer history that you think belongs in this archive, or you just want to talk about something with me, please reach out to me. I will talk to you. I'll have more information for you. But we're building something hopefully at Vandy over the next couple of years. Now, I said this a while ago. I'm sticking with it. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It seems way less likely now than it did 3 weeks ago. But Romel Kyoto to Nashville. Still a free agent and doesn't want to go back to Honduras.
Or Montreal, I'm assuming.
Well, there was a story that came out in Honduras saying that he wants to continue to play abroad. So
There you go.
there you go.
I'm gonna go with one Fafa Pico, and you know what? Fafa Pico to Inter Miami. I'm sorry to do this. That's my prediction.
You're just doing that
Wow.
because he lives there.
I mean, easy one, right? I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to make it easy on myself.
You want to plug? You want to plug? You got anything to plug, Valer?
Yes. Please follow Valer Shabilla at Valer Shabilla on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. Um, I am doing a lot of National SC coverage starting now because I took a little bit of a break with the show and everything. So now we're back on it, baby. And I did a lot in 2023. Go look at my recap. But also, I'm going to do a lot more in 2024. So stay tuned. And I like covering this team. So please support me while I do that because it makes it easier to do so. So thank you.
At page Stephen HD on Twitter. This is my last week as the Roadies president, so I am now not with any sort of SG at all. So I am just me. But yeah, support all those what Clay and Valera are doing. They're awesome. They're doing great. Ladies and gentlemen, Valera brought up needing goal scoring, and his option is declined. He's coming home. One Dominic Baji will be a National SC signing. Now that his option is declined, we do need that outstriker depth, and he's coming home, baby. I believe in it. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show. We appreciate it. Of course, we'll be back, I believe, next week.
And then we can talk about Daniel Rios possibly being back in MLS.
Yeah.
Ooh, there's your teaser for next week.
So much fun. And thank you all again so much for listening to the show. And let's go blue.
I
Go
don't understand.
Michael Penix. Let's make it happen. Kalen DeBoer. Woo, go Huskies.
What are you guys saying? These not even real words.